Hey, the Biochemistry Academy here. In this video, we will talk about GMOs. So the first question is, what are GMOs or what is a GMO? Well, GMO stands for Genetically Modified Organisms. Now, a genetically modified organism is an organism whose DNA has been modified in the laboratory in order to favor the expression of a desired physiological or desired trait. Or a GMO can also be defined as a living organism whose genetic material has been artificially altered using genetic engineering technique. In our previous video, we talked about the introduction to biotechnology and genetic engineering. So to understand what genetic engineering is, you can check our previous video on the introduction to biotechnology and genetic engineering. So let's proceed. Now, in modifying an organism, the process involves introducing specific genes from one organism into another, resulting in the combination of genetic material not normally found in nature. When some people hear about GMOs, they are against it. They look at them like monsters, while there are people that also support genetically modified organisms. Well, the truth is, most of the food we eat today, be it rice, beans, meat, or some of the food that we consume, are not really what they used to be when we humans started farming like 10,000 years ago. For example, let's look at maize or corn. It was originated from the wheat-like synth, and also fruit like watermelon used to be originally white and not really sweet. But today we have sweet corn because earlier humans started to manipulate plant genetics by simply just growing seed from plants that have a desirable trait, like growing quicker and making it taste sweeter. And that is why we have the sweet corn today. And also, if we check the watermelon today, it is red in color and it is very, very sweet. And that is why farmers today still follow a similar process, but equipped with the knowledge of DNA and genetics. That is why we have different varieties of vegetables at the market. Scientists or plant breeders can only transfer genes between closely related species, and such is known as artificial selection. But today, with the knowledge of genetic engineering, we can move a specific gene from one organism to another, even if it belongs to a different species. If you remember, we said that a gene is a functional unit of heredity, meaning that we inherit genes from our parents and our kids also inherit our own genes. Now, this gene contains certain instruction for protein and enzyme that makes sure our body carry out all its function properly, such as eating, breathing, digestion, growth, and so on. Now, transferring genes within the same species is called cisgenics. Now, with genetic engineering, we can take a set of genes from a human and then insert it into a bacteria, and this is how bacteria can produce insulin. Now, such kind of gene transfer is called transgenics, and GM crops or genetically modified crops are transgenic crops. Creating a GM crop can take several years, but let's summarize the step by which these GM crops are produced. First, we need to identify the particular trait to add into the recipient plant and the gene that will give that organism that desired trait. Then, secondly, we need to make copies of the gene from the organism that has the desired trait. Then, thirdly, we insert that gene into the DNA of the recipient plant. And lastly, we grow the GM plant. To understand this process more in details, we would use an example with BT corn, the most widely grown GM crop around the world. So normally, insects and pests can lower crop yields by eating the crops, and that is why the use of insecticides kill these insects but have certain side effects for both we humans and the environment. So there was a question, what if we didn't have to use pesticide and could still prevent pests from harming our crops? Then scientists then began research to find solution for such, and that was then when we found one in a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis, also known as BT. This bacteria produces a protein that is toxic to these insects. So the target was for the corn plant to produce the BT protein on its own. From the bacteria, the particular gene can be isolated that makes the protein, then make copies of the BT gene and then insert it into the plant's DNA. To insert a foreign gene into a plant, you need a vector. Now this vector acts like a vehicle to carry the gene into the plant. The most commonly used vector is a bacterium called Agrobacterium tumefaciens. It is commonly found in soil and it causes disease called crown gall disease in plants. It does this by inserting a piece of its DNA into the plant cells. It essentially makes a GMO for its own use. Well, this bacterium has a piece of DNA known as T plasmid. The bacteria send this T plasmid into the plant cell by making a tunnel into the plant cell. Within the plasmid is a small portion called tDNA. The tDNA will insert itself into the plant cell's DNA and become a part of the plant's DNA. Scientists can modify this T plasmid by using enzymes, the molecular versions of scissors and glue, to redesign the tDNA and add the PT genes. Gene gun can also be used to insert a piece of DNA into the plant cell. Now, the newly transformed plants are grown in a greenhouse and it undergo rigorous testing to ensure that the gene has been inserted in the right place and doing what it was created to do, and ensuring there is no unexpected or undesirable effects in the plant. It is only after several years of safety that the scientists can now contact regulatory agencies such as C.P.A., USDA, FDA, if it's to get approval for commercial release. Getting proof from this agency is proof that there are no allergies from these modified crops and it is more nutritious or the same as the original crop. Now, the media often label GM crops as bad food, but the truth is that this GM food comes from a bacteria that performs such genetic manipulation in nature. Other people do protest that the living God created this crop or this food natural, so why do we have to genetically modify them? While others also say the living God gave us this knowledge to help humanity to be fruitful and multiply, so they are making use of the knowledge that was given to them by God to create and to recreate. So they are recreating. Well, let us know your take on GMOs. Are you for or are you against GMOs? Now, this is what makes genetic engineering more precise and quicker than the traditional breeding. There are many other modified crops and animals, so GMOs have produced crops with higher yields and less use of pesticide, also providing spontaneous growth of both plants and animals for human use. GM crops have been around for up to 30 years with no adverse effects shown in humans or animals. Well, let's still know your take on GMOs. Are you for or are you against it? Well, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Biochemistry Academy for more content or videos like this. See you in our next video. Arigato.